So I think part of it is that it has to do with my life outside of my kids too, is that I have all these different things going on that I really want to make a point that when I have time to spend with my kids, is really quality time and we're having fun and we're doing fun things. And it's not always, I mean, motherhood is never all, flowers and roses and happy things. But I try to make sure that that means I'm focusing on my kids and paying attention with them and that we're doing things together as a family.
Hi, all. Welcome to another edition of our PurePower Podcast. And I'm so very delighted today to introduce one of our own and exemplary ambassadors of our PurePower mission, Siobhan Pritchard from our hometown, Steamboat Springs, Colorado. Siobhan, I'm so looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm looking forward to having a little chat.
Yeah. Well, we all play so many different roles in life, right? And you have a number of them as a highly competitive elite runner, a trail runner, and a busy mom. And I definitely want to talk more about that. But I would love to just, if you would just give folks in the community a sense of who you are and how you found yourself living in Steamboat, and we can kind of go back from there.
Yeah, so I guess I'm probably most known, or one of my favorite things is trail running. I've been doing it for a pretty long time, but I don't know, I think probably a lot of people that I know don't realize that I've kind of always had this snow sports background. I grew up in Wisconsin in the freezing cold, and there wasn't a lot of snow, there wasn't a lot of stuff, but I still just kind of gravitated towards skiing and then eventually snowboarding and basically anything outdoors, which eventually was kind of the part of the reason I ended up moving to Colorado and made this a home. But it wasn't until a few years later that I started exploring the state a little bit more and found Steamboat, and my love for Steamboat just grew. Still took a few more years, or maybe a lot more years, before we could make that happen. But my husband and I just had this dream for our family that this was the place where we really wanted to raise our kids. There were so many opportunities, not just for us, but for our kids and for our family. And so that was just something we really worked towards and made happen. And yeah, we've been here now for, I guess, about 5 years. And it's been pretty much everything that we hoped it would be for us and for our family.
I love it. And then our worlds intersected, and you're, as you said, most well known for trail running. And I wonder, how did that start for you?
So I actually started running when I was about 8, and I started on the track with sprinting, which is so far from what I run now that it's a little bit comical. But I ran the 100 and 200, dabbled in the 400 a little bit through high school. But my brother was actually a cross country runner, and he was a pretty good runner himself. And just kind of watching him always sparked a little bit of that interest in me. In it wasn't really trail, but like off-road and a little bit longer distance. So after my senior year in high school, he convinced me to run a 5K with him. And I finished, was like, wow, well, that wasn't as bad as I expected it to be. This is kind of fun. So when I got to college, I had the opportunity to walk on our cross country team. And there was this one place we used to take a bus out to, and it was called Reforestation. And I just remember absolutely falling in love with these trails. And I mean, going back now, there are probably nothing really that special, but in my mind and in the moment that we would run those trails, it was some of my best memories from college were out there just in the middle of these woods, this group of awesome women pushing each other and challenging each other. And that's really where I first started trail running, and it just got in my heart and never really left, I guess.
Well, that's very evident to me and our small team at PurePower, because of the way in which you share that enthusiasm and joy in what you share about running. And I wonder, is there, there's something about, as you've touched on, being out on the trail. And, it can often involve, inclement weather and running through that. what is it that you feel like, keeps pulling you back, even though it involves a fair amount of discomfort?
I've thought about it before. I'm not really sure why. I've always kind of been drawn to putting myself in these challenges, in these situations where like, you don't actually have to do it. No one's making you, no one's forcing you to be out in these crazy conditions or run up these crazy steep mountains. But it's just always something that's been inside of me. And I love that challenge. And I love trying to see if, where I can push myself to.
Yeah, I wonder whether it's just something that feeds a calling inside, and perhaps coupled with, at least for me, day-to-day life is so different from that, right? And today, so often connected to devices like this all day, that it presents this outlet for disconnecting from all of that. Does that show up for you when you get out, and just in a short period of time, are you able to disconnect in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, and I notice that I still run roads sometimes, and I love running, whatever kind of surface it is. But I find myself when I'm out on the trail that's where I can really let go. There's not as many distractions. Maybe, I'm not really sure, but yeah, I get out into the, off on this trail and I can let go of whether it was work or family or any of those other things that you kind of have hanging on, and just kind of more be in the moment and enjoy where you're actually at.
Well, and I love that last part, is just enjoying where you're at, because so much of our day-to-day is often pointing us to, or calling us to prefer things in a way they're not, right? And in that way, not really being in the moment. I love that. And I wonder, for those that, perhaps, running, I mean, let's just, first of all, congratulate you again on an amazing race this past fall at the 100-mile Run Rabbit Run here in our hometown, Steamboat Springs. That must have felt good to run so well and so strong through the course of 100 miles.
It did. Thanks. Yeah, that was probably one of my favorite races I've done. Speaking of inclement weather, we definitely faced our fair share of challenges in that race, but I just felt really strong the whole time and was able to just, all those to-do lists, all those things that, are in your day-to-day life, really let go. And where I was at was in the middle of this race, running through snowstorms and hail and whatever else that got thrown at me. And I just enjoyed it. Like, I legitimately had so much fun. And I think that had a lot to do with how the race went and the success of it. But I can just honestly say it was absolutely a blast.
Well, it's kudos again. And, I think there are those that are probably listening saying, oh my God, these long, trail races, inconceivable. As I first did when I read my first magazine article, it talked about a 100-mile trail race, and I thought that's impossible. And yet, for my own journey, 6 years later, I did that very thing in the Run Rabbit Run. But to just, view running more as just a practice in a way, because we see in what you share that it is a practice. It's sort of part of your lifestyle. And for those that perhaps the 100-mile distance seems so distant and unachievable, how to just get started. You've had obviously a long career running, but for the uninitiated, do friends ask you? And if they do ask you, how do you respond with, here's how to just get started, and not view it as something that's super intimidating?
So I'm not sure I've had the greatest build up to this, or maybe the way most people should take, or maybe more people should do it that way. But kind of my approach to a lot of things is I just kind of go for it, whether I'm ready for it or not. And I remember I'd heard about the Leadville 100 in high school. And when I first heard about it, I thought the same thing, like, this is crazy. How could you possibly do this? But in the same breath, I thought I should definitely try that at least one time. I didn't think I would finish. I didn't think I would ever run a second one, but I knew something in me said I was going to try this crazy thing one time.
It reminds me of the poster that says, that's a horrible idea. What time?
Yep. That's totally like the motto of my life. And so, yeah. And, this was back in, I think I registered for the race in 2011. So there was no lottery, you just hit register and you were in the race. And I found myself, and I don't know really what happened, but I clicked that button and I paid my money, and I was committed to giving it a try at least. A lot went wrong, and I had no idea what I was doing with training. I didn't end up finishing that race, but when I did complete my day, I knew it wasn't going to be, I'm going to try this one time and that's it. I was immediately thinking, okay, what do I need to do to go back? And it's just been something I've chipped away at little by little. And then you learn more about how to train better, how to fuel better, how to recover better, all to make yourself more successful.
Well, yeah, there's such a foundation that builds up to it. And I think you've touched on it a little bit. It's really enjoying the process of it all that carries you through so much work, right? To the outsider, that looks like work. But then once you get a feel for what it's like to be out there experiencing it, it makes it all worthwhile, I assume. It's clear from what you've shared.
Yeah, absolutely. I think of the race as like, that's a celebration of all the hard work you've put in. So it's just the time to go out and absolutely have fun with it, because regardless of the outcome, you've done the work, you've put in the hours, the miles, you've made sacrifices to get to that point. So you might as well enjoy it.
Well, in the midst of all of this in your life, one of the other roles we mentioned at the top was as mother, and you're juggling a lot. You have 3, I believe, right?
Yep, 3 kids.
3 kids, one of whom specially gifted. And I know that, your world is this balancing act, as it is for so many of us. And so, yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about what that's like for you with, the demands of motherhood and training and life as a runner.
Yeah, I mean, it can definitely be really tough. There's, the unexpected calls from school or the nurse, or, a kid wakes up in the middle of the night sick or just having a bad dream and you don't get the sleep that you wanted. And I think probably the biggest thing has been learning to be flexible and making the most out of the time that you do have. So even if I have to end up shortening a run or I miss a training day, the training that I do get in, I really focus on and make sure it's of a higher quality. And that's something I think pre-kids, some days I did, I was a high quality run. Some days I didn't, some days just kind of, go with it. And I have to think a lot more about it in prioritizing my training. But, I think that's a good balance too, because when you are able to really prioritize it and focus on it, it just gives you a different focus in, the outcome and how you end up training. It's not so, just, go with the flow. It means a lot more too.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you've just learned to exercise that discipline in that way.
Yeah. And I know, like, there's days when I know it's going to be a crazy day, or I know a kid's been homesick for a couple days and the chances of getting my run in are really slim. But it's a high priority run that I have to get in, and you're up really early running, whether it's on the treadmill or out in the dark in the middle of the night sometimes. And, being creative with some of my runs are not always these epic, gorgeous runs that you see some other trail runners doing for training. It's, just making the most of what I can do.
Yeah, exactly. And I heard you say earlier, even if it means shortening it seems like you're emphasizing the consistency, even when at times you need to narrow the scope and say, it's only going to be 30 or 40 minutes right today.
Yeah, exactly. And just what do you need to get done in that shorter amount of time? But it's in your head still telling yourself this is still important. And even if it's 30 minutes, it's not just junk miles. It's not just a waste. This is important, not just for your training, but it's important for you as a person too.
Yeah, I love that. Well, juggling 3, you guys are out and about all the time. We talked about this just minutes before we hit record. What does that time mean to you and your relationship with them?
So I think, part of it is that it has to do with, my life outside of my kids too, is that I have all these different things going on that I really want to make a point that when I have time to spend with my kids, is really quality time, and we're having fun and we're doing fun things. And it's not always, motherhood is never all, flowers and roses and happy things. But I try to make sure that that means I'm focusing on my kids and paying attention with them, and that we're doing things together as a family. So here, in Steamboat, we love being outside. That's just kind of our family. It's how we've always been and how we are with our kids. So we ski together as a family a lot. We mountain bike, we hike, we do all these things together. And it's become really important to me, but I can see it as my kids have started to get older, how important that is to them and their relationships with each other and with us. And I think I love seeing it.
Well, I can't echo that enough, the difference it makes, right? To introduce them to the out of doors earlier, and frankly, movement, because I think, if we switch gears a little bit and think about what are the greatest, health predicaments that we face, culturally and socially, many of them come back to sedentary lifestyle, right? I think we know that. There's not a big mystery. And so it's something that, to gift kids that experience of just moving outside.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I've always wanted to do it in a way that didn't feel like I was making them go exercise. Like, okay, you have to get this 20 minutes of exercise outside every day. I want it to just be something they don't even think about. It's just part of their life and the way that they live. So when they get older too, they're not thinking, oh, this is something I have to do. It's just something that's instilled in them and that they want to do.
I love it. Well, it pairs so well with, these three pillars for us as we think about how we perform day to day and try to do so from the inside out. Mindset, movement, and nourishment is the third. I feel like we've kind of addressed the first two. That third piece. So how does this engine you keep stoked in your life continue to get fuel? What is that like for you in terms of just nutrition, supplementation? It sounds like it's an area you've paid more attention to over the years.
Yeah, I absolutely have. And especially really this past year, that became a huge focus in my training was, okay, I've done this much with my actual physical training, but where can I even up that further? And so I've really focused on my nutrition and making sure I was getting enough protein. I know that's something that I don't particularly get a lot of, but I also focus on not eliminating things, not restricting, just my personality. I don't do well with that. And so making sure there's room in my diet, my fueling plan to allow myself everything and not feel restricted, but focusing on the important things. So the timing of my nutrition, when am I getting protein? If it's the day before a long run or a race, making sure adequate carbs, things like that, I guess. And then instilling that in my kids too, and making it not seem like a bad thing or good foods or bad foods. These are just foods that are going to fuel us. And if you want to be able to ski all day, or you want to go on a 4-hour mountain bike ride, you have to think about how you're taking care of your body from the inside. And then on the supplement side of that too, PurePower has been a huge component. And I think probably I didn't even realize how important it would have been pre-kids, but after kids, when sleep is not great ever, even Power Down has been such a game changer for the sleep that I do get, making sure that's quality. I feel like this whole quality thing has been a really big deal having kids, because the time you have, whether it's sleep or training or whatever it is, it's got to be really high quality because you're limited and you're stretched so thin in all areas. And then, so recovery has been a big area that I found once I became a mom really kind of fell to the wayside and I wasn't focusing on, but that's definitely a place where PurePower has really helped. And even I think that beyond just the supplements, the community of the PurePower team has been so supportive and inspirational in making that a priority and realizing how much more I needed to put into my recovery than I had been previously thinking about.
That's awesome, Siobhan. So happy to hear that. And we feel the same about a community that lifts one another up. And boy, don't we need as much of that day to day as we possibly can. And this promise that through an active lifestyle and embracing athletics in whatever form, that we can, we can feel at our best in a way that I think, those that aren't yet sold don't fully appreciate how good that active lifestyle can feel. And recognize, though, true, right? I think this is true, that if we don't feel good consistently, it's easy to say, see, I don't like it. So, takes a little bit of getting there, but it sounds like you're just constantly sort of tweaking and trying to optimize both on the energy side and the recovery side.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think there's always those little areas, and you get to a certain level of performance and you realize that there's smaller areas now that you need to tweak. And my personality too is always, goes back to the whole, liking to challenge myself. Okay, how can I improve? How can I do a little bit better? And I don't want to say not being satisfied, because I am, I was very satisfied with my race this fall and proud of it. And I think that's super important. But I think there's the other side to that too, is, okay, but there is still room for improvement. It wasn't the best, I'm not at the ultimate or the peak. I don't know if you'll ever get to the peak. Yeah, well, always trying to do a little better.
This might be a great topic to close out on, and it's really an important one in my experience. And it's just what you're touching on in terms of being satisfied and, tying back to some things you shared earlier, sort of learning through the experience, right? And not being perhaps, so wedded to an expectation of an outcome, but instead just just enjoying it for its own sake in both preparation and in performance. And it sounds like you've gotten to a pretty good spot there in terms of getting completely attached to what an outcome should look like.
Yeah, no, I definitely have. I know I've had some races in the past where I've set these goals and they had more to do with place or other people around me, and they never end up going very well for me. And, that might work for some people. I found it definitely does not work for me. And those are the races I look back and I wasn't having fun. And it wasn't, this super happy thing. But the races where I go in, and I still have goals for myself, but I make them more about time and more about a goal just on me. And wherever that ends up landing me at the end of the day, that's where it's going to be. But I have way more fun. I enjoy it. And I don't know, coincidentally, maybe I usually end up doing better in terms of the podium kind of thing.
Well, I think perhaps analogous to other areas of life in which we can probably flow a little bit better and enjoy things without getting wrapped around the axle. And I only say this because I know it so well for myself. And it's great to hear you share that, because, again, for those that, maybe they're thinking about getting into trail running or something new, that the letting go of expectations, comparisons can save so much, both heartache and frustration, right? Because as you shared, it did not tend to go well, right? And so I think that's a great thing to leave everyone with, is just, to go out there and enjoy the experience, prepare for it, but not use it as a source of comparison or beating oneself up, but instead just enjoying it.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, what's the point, right? So make it something that you're going to have fun with. And that, I don't know, just like my last race, it was an absolute blast. If it's a blast, you're successful no matter what. Yeah.
Well, Siobhan, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to catch up with me and our broader community. It's such a pleasure connecting with you.
Yeah, thanks, Don. It was nice to have a chance to talk to you and catch up for a little bit.
Okay, fantastic, Siobhan. We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
All right, bye.